Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar on list management. And good morning or good evening, depending on where some of you are at. This webinar is just going to go over the basics of list management. We're going to talk about how lists work in ActiveDEMAND and some of the little idiosyncrasies around how they work. The webinar is being recorded, so if you know other people at your work who might need this video, we'll be able to get it over to them afterwards. So just by virtue of you being registered for this, you are going to get the copy of the recording emailed to you sometime after the webinar is finished. Without any further ado, let's get into it. So I've got quite a few things here, but these are all pretty short little things to talk about. I'm going to also jump between the presentation and then some like live screens just to show how this stuff works and where to find it. And I'm going to do it right away because the first things that I want to talk about is just the all contacts page. On the all contacts page, there's a possibility of browsing or searching. There you can search for, I use the all contacts screen all the time. The way I use it is typically by searching for contacts or customers. So I'm looking by name, by phone number works, email, IP address. And then you can also browse by well, all contacts or a contact list or segment or a segment of a list. So why don't we just head on over to our fake account here and just take a look at that all contacts page. So that search that I was mentioning is right here. So if I wanted to search by like area code or something like that, I could do that. I could throw the phone number in there. I can also use this all contacts drop down here. This gives me access to segments and it gives me access to lists. They're pretty small. I typically just type in here whatever I'm looking for is just easy enough to find in there. And again, you can do a segment of a list inside here if you wish as well. So you can do some pretty powerful things inside here. I mostly use this all contacts page as like ad hoc searching, just when I'm looking to find a particular person. If I wanted to do some more powerful filtering, I'll probably use a contact list or a contact segment instead. Let's get back into presentation mode here. So that's the all contacts page, and the reason why I start with it is it's kind of like a first step to building lists or potentially going from, hey, I'm looking for this to I want to do this more often. So just a couple of notes on segments versus lists. First, we'll talk about contact segments. Segments are temporary. They only really build or query when you ask it to or when you ask it to build. So it's kind of like Schrodinger's cat. It just pops into existence when when you look at it. They're most useful for quick little use often segments. So an example of segment might be if you always have to divide divisions or get leads to EMEA or something like that. Maybe you could just like, rather than trying to remember all the countries that make up EMEA, you could just make a segment that automatically checks if that contact is in any of those countries. So that's an example of it's reusable. You can use it in multiple places and update it when it needs updating, and it'll just get updated in all those places as well. List, on the other hand, has members. So when people are in a list, they like belong in that list. A static list is one where you would add people by hand manually, or in an automation, you can do that too. You can also, when you upload a CSV, it will generate a static list of the people that you uploaded. So that's one thing to consider. Static lists, I would say they're useful for, yeah, email lists and that kind of a thing. Spring 2020 conference attendees. So if you, after the conference, you get that list in a CSV format, in an Excel format, you can upload it to the platform afterwards. Dynamic lists are more flexible. They are basically, you set out a query or a filter that to say when people should be added to the list. They automatically pop into that list when they match that filter, and they automatically pop out when they no longer match that filter. An example here might be prospects interested in SEO. That might be something that I can build a list on and then email based on afterwards. Now, one thing to note, like what if I need to combine multiples of these? I would say use segments in lists. don't do lists of lists. You can do a list of multiple segments. You could say, I want people who are interested in SEO and are in an EMEA country. That's totally fine. I don't want to make lists of lists. The other thing to consider is, should I just use a custom field and then build based on that? And really, there's a lot of overlap in, I guess you could say, there's lots of different ways of doing the same thing in ActiveDEMAND, whether you use a list segment or custom field. And there's many right answers on how to build automation. But I would say that when it comes to custom fields, they're easier to manipulate manually. So if someone comes by a contact and they say like, oh, yeah, they're in EMEA. No, they're actually not in EMEA. They have to figure out how that dynamic list is working in order to change that. Whereas if it's a custom field, they just flip the custom field and they move on. So it's a little bit easier that way. Dynamic lists are kind of more set in stone, and sometimes because a dynamic list may be using segments, maybe using multiple segments, it can be harder to unravel what they're doing if you build complicated dynamic lists. Here at ActiveDEMAND, we often use both of them. So an example might be, maybe we have, this is a real example, we have a custom field where the organization type might be agency partner, and we have a dynamic list that is active agency partners. So it's querying for, do they have this field set, and are they active? So we use both here. Some different special abilities that you can get from contact lists. One is to use it, and the most common one is to use it as a start point for a campaign or a drip campaign. So you can have the campaign where people being added to the list is the first step, and you can use it, you could set it so that when they drop out of that list or they're no longer applicable, they drop out of the campaign as well. Another thing that I like to use it for is a dashboard or scheduled report. So I have new leads last 30, it's a contact list. Once a day, I get an email that says, how many new leads do we generate in the last 30 days? Easy. And not only is it easy, but I can, just coming back to this one, I can like spot check that. I can go back and take a look in that contact list and say, oh, I see it's 100. Who's in that 100? What's going on in here? I can take a look at it. So it's, I guess I can audit it afterwards. You can publish these lists to Google Ads or Facebook for custom audience targeting. Facebook's requirements on this are pretty easy to meet. I think, like, I can't remember what the number is, 1030. It's not very many people to do that in Facebook. Inside Google Ads, you need thousands. And one thing to note is that if someone is added or removed from a contact list, it's noted inside the activity log. So if you go to the contact and go through the activity log, you'll see these ads are removed. So keep that in mind as well. Now, if you import a contact list from a CSV, it's pretty easy to do. You just clean up your list in Excel or Google Sheets first. You don't really need to name the headers other than just to remind yourself, because you're just going to map them anyways afterwards. Why don't we go ahead and do that? I'm going to go over to lead leader here. I'm going to go import some contacts, upload a file. Yeah, let's grab that one, and then let's go next. And you can see here that I'm going to choose what fields to send each of these different columns into. This one's full name. I just like doing type as you, or search as you type as you search, whatever. Organization name, yep, phone number. Now I want to make sure I use the contact phone number, not the org phone number. Product of interest. Now here's where I'm using a custom field, right? So I would use, I don't know, some sort of like custom field that I'm using. And then email. Now that email one is a special one because that's a lookup column. That one is how we're going to make sure that we don't get any duplicates. So at the bottom here, we have update existing contacts. If I don't check that, then it won't update them. And you'll notice here, this first row is full name, organization. I don't want that updated, so I'm going to say exclude that first row. And that's it. That's literally all there is to uploading a contact list with a CSV. I would say a couple of pointers. Make sure that your custom fields are set before doing this. And yeah, and then just go ahead and update. Let's get that back to full screen here. And that's just showing what we just did. The next way to get a list inside ActiveDEMAND is to use the CRM integration or CRM synchronization. Here, ActiveDEMAND can sync, and it's bidirectional, but when we think about how we pull from CRMs, we use the contact CRM update. And really there, that's just a one-way trip. We need to, when we post back up to the CRM, we use a different workflow. But when we integrate these CRM contacts, basically just make sure your custom fields are figured out first. And you can, if you wish to, filter out irrelevant contacts. So we have this filtering capacity inside CRM contact updates, and that basically says don't, only import rows where this field is this. So for our sister product Funnel Flare, if I want to only bring in people who are using the Funnel Flare product, I would use this filter to make sure that I'm only bringing those people in. Getting towards the end here, one thing to think about is just managing duplicates. But this takes work, like every system. Your CRM will create duplicates. ActiveDEMAND will create duplicates if you let it, and if you maybe get lazy, I guess, about bringing contacts in, or about how the automation is creating contacts. It's important to use lookup fields so you don't create them in the first place. So try to use that email address, try to make sure that those are in there. Well, that being said, you're still gonna, what if someone uses their Gmail and their work email address? Okay, well now you're gonna get duplicates, even though the email address is the same. But ActiveDEMAND has some really interesting ways of looking for duplicates inside the duplicate detection area. So the first one is first and last names. That's great for a small database. If you have a very large contact database, it's not going to be that useful. You're going to have lots of people who have the same first and last name, but they're totally different people. So let's move on from there. Well, email address. Email address is the obvious one. If you manage to create duplicates with the same email address, it's good to merge them. Phone number is, in my experience, not as useful, just because lots of people will have a central phone number that's potentially for their company. IP address is great. Sometimes with IP address, you can use duplicate detection, but sometimes it's neat to search for contacts IP address in the all contacts screen. And the reason why I like to do that is sometimes people come in and they sign up out of the blue with ActiveDEMAND. I'm like, where'd they come from? How do they know us? And I'll typically go back and look at their IP address to see if it's been associated with any other contact in the past, because sometimes that tells me that they were actually here before and they were doing something else. So maybe that can help as well. And just merge them when you see them. Merge the contacts to make sure that you keep your duplicates down to a dull row, really. We have a couple of special kinds of lists. You'll see these options when you build a contact list, and I just want to make sure that we know exactly what they are. So the first list is everyone. We use that for most lists. Sales. A sales list is a list of salespeople that you email leads to. Okay, so you add all your salespeople to your sales list, and then if inside a workflow you email a contact, you email the contact to the sales list, we consider that contact sales ready. So this is really a sales ready lead. If you email a contact's information to sales inside a workflow, that's what triggers that sales ready lead, and that's what that's based on. Marketing's for internal audiences for reporting. So if we need to tell marketing about something, hey, this person did something, maybe take a look at them. Or if we're doing other kinds of reporting, that's what the marketing special list is for. And that's basically it. So there's some really powerful ways of building lists inside ActiveDEMAND. Again, there are many different ways of doing the same thing, whether you use a segment or a dynamic list or a custom field. Lots of different ways of doing the same kind of a thing. But just try to think about how you're going to use these lists in the future, or how you're going to filter in the future, and that should help out with how you build it in the first place, and it should help to reduce some of the rework that you need to do in the future. Just a reminder, everyone who's signed up for this webinar will get a copy of the recording a couple days afterwards. So that'll pop up on our YouTube channel. If you have any other people who might need some additional training, there are some other fantastic videos that we have on our YouTube channel that are great as well. Just on behalf of ActiveDEMAND, thank you again for attending, and this concludes the presentation. Thank you.